Hey there everybody, Rash here. Now let's start this video by asking a question. How do you decide whether you should give a video game a chance? The genre? Looks like a game you've played before? Or is it simply because it's popular? Well, if you're like me, the main criteria is often the game's aesthetics. And obviously, if all that it has to offer is how it looks, then I'll quit it within a few hours of playing. But for me and many other gamers out there, the game's environment, art style, and sheer beauty of its world is what sucks us into a spiraling addiction where playing this specific game is the only mission we have in life. Granted that the story and or gameplay are also just as fleshed out. How a game looks is often a very important aspect which developers spend a not so insignificant amount of time, effort, and money on. But before they could do that, they first have to decide what the game's art style is going to be. Some studios go for the realistic graphics, others a more toon-shaded aesthetic, or just good old pixel art. Now, I think it's a common understanding that mostly it's the AAA game studios that go for the more realistic graphics and keep pushing the envelope with how high they could get the poly count on their video game models. Other smaller studios try to go for the cartoonish look, and most of the really small indie studios go for pixel art. Now, in this video, I'm going to try to discuss whether a game's visual appeal is dependent on how realistic and defined its graphics are, or is it merely the artistic choices that actually matter. In the world of gaming, it seems that there is always a struggle on the consumer and developer side to try to get the best and latest hardware out there, which compels companies like Nvidia, AMD, and Intel, as well as console companies like Sony and Microsoft to always try to innovate and improve the underlying structures of their products, all for the sole reason of being able to code and play video games with the best, highest definition graphics possible at the highest FPS possible. And given that this whole industry is moving, it is no secret that there is a great demand from gamers for games with high poly counts and massive environments, which all too often come at the expense of performance, hence the struggle to always try to improve the hardware. But does a game need all that to look visually appealing? Realistic graphics are definitely a great visual art style to go for, but it's important to remember that it is only one of the many video game art styles out there. While it can also offer a good degree of creative expression and each video game studio can put in their personal touch and make their game unique, other art styles can offer just as much creative expression to the developers and look just as visually appealing. Having more pixels in your game, more polygons, or better shading doesn't necessarily make it look good. If developers are only concerned about the graphics of the game instead of putting more effort into the general visual aesthetic, the game will often turn out bland with no character and lacking on immersion. That's because having high graphical fidelity, having more detail in your models, and being able to render those details won't translate into good visuals if you don't use that ability to detail to serve the visual aesthetic of the game. In short, graphical fidelity doesn't equal game look good. Now, I'm not even going to attempt to give examples of games with high graphical fidelity but looked bad. I never gave a chance to video games I'm not totally sold by their aesthetics. But what I can give you is examples of absolute masterpieces with amazing visuals that have very little graphical fidelity. Some people think that Minecraft is, for all intents and purposes, an ugly game, but I would say that's not the majority. There is a massive building community in Minecraft, which I'm part of, and there is no way anyone can convince me that these people build only for the sake of placing blocks. They build massive, beautiful structures because they like how they look. They like how the blocks are arranged together and how the colors match and contrast. And some of my favorite games which I think look absolutely stunning are pixel art games. Graveyard Keeper and Stone Shard come to mind. If pixel art is done right, the game can offer great immersion, which leads to great experiences where you mindlessly play for hours without realizing that you're not actually in the game. All thanks to great art direction and emphasis put on making the elements in the game's environment complement each other and try to achieve a unified visual aesthetic. Another example of a great video game that doesn't have much going for it in terms of its graphical capabilities is Valheim. Its graphics are straight out of PlayStation 2, yet it still looks stunning, and it also has a large building community just like Minecraft. Now, most of the games I mentioned bring up a certain advantage that they have, which games with better graphics can't possibly dream of having, and that's procedurally generated worlds. When you don't have to worry about the processing power that it takes to render your graphics, you have the advantage of using that processing power elsewhere, whether it is for making procedurally generated content which offers playthrough variability, or generally trying to improve quality of life features, eliminate bugs, make an unmodifiable world, or to give some gamers with not so impressive machines a chance to play a great game. Now, all that being said, I still think that trying to innovate in terms of graphical fidelity and refine the techniques required for these ultra-realistic game environments is still worthwhile, even though not every AAA game studio is going to use them to their full potential to make a visually balanced game. The technology is still a great tool that can be used properly, and having more polygons, pixels, and better shading can certainly allow for greater freedom, which other graphically inferior art style directions don't have. The only problem I and many gamers and critics out there have is with the constant obsession that a lot of people in the gaming industry have with better graphics at all costs. Higher graphics at the cost of poor art style direction, higher graphics at the cost of poor performance, higher graphics at the cost of broken games that are bugged out of their mind, and higher graphics at the cost of thousands of dollars spent on gaming machines. Now let's take Elden Ring for example. A modern game with good graphics, but not excessively good like God of War or AC Valhalla. Yet its environment looks enchanting, a beautiful world with captivating scenery and vistas that look like paintings, all thanks to the emphasis FromSoft put on the art direction, instead of throwing their money at high graphics and sacrificing everything else for it. In conclusion, a very short conclusion because I already said everything there is to say, I think. Better graphical fidelity, good. Less graphical fidelity, also good, as long as art style direction is also good. And of course, I'm only talking about the game's visuals. The gameplay, story, music, voice acting are all important components that could have their own dedicated video. And on that note, make sure to like this video and subscribe if you like the content. I put a lot of effort into these things, 2 weeks of hard work. This one is a bit more of a video essay. My other videos are also like that, but less essay-y, I guess. But that's it. My time has come and I'm out of here. See ya.